welcome. This must be part 21 now of the Battle of Waterloo. We're flying around Paris, just taking in the sights. And this is where Napoleon spent March, April, May, and early June. He's trying to appeal to the Allies that he's got peaceful intentions, but at the same time trying to increase the strength of his army, but without doing it in an obvious way. This is Flight Pass. My name is Simon. We use this scenery, the Microsoft Flight Simulator scenery, to get a deeper insight into some of the places in history, and we get to see how topography and distance affects the decisions made at the time. I've just followed Napoleon from Elba all the way up here. He took about 24 days to get from Elba to Paris without a shot being fired. So we're now looking at what he does in Paris at that time. And we're also looking into the Allies' reactions to his return. So we got to the point where he can't mobilize his forces. He can reorganize things. He's moving his national troops around, national guards around. He's putting them in the fortifications on the borders. He knows that by about the 16th of April, the Allies aren't falling for his peaceful protestations, and they're likely to try to invade. So he needs to have troops in the forts. He needs to improve. Hello. Loser 75. This is what you can do, by the way. You can join me in on the flight simulator and fly around and point me in the right direction. In fact, let's see if we can follow him or her. Yeah, so Napoleon is trying to prepare his army by not preparing his army, but he increases the production of arms and muskets. He sends out procurement for horses. He starts messing with the conscription side of things. And at the same time as he's trying to do that, the Allies are just openly sending their troops to the border. So by about April the 16th, Napoleon realizes that he will not be allowed to remain in power peacefully. So they will try to remove him. And so this then puts him in the position of, well, what can he do? As I say, he's got possibly 200,000 troops, but less than that. We can get onto the actual numbers when we get to the campaign. But he knows at the time, right now, that the armies of Prussia and the British, which include the Belgians and the Dutch and the Brunswick, are around about the same size as his. So he then switches his mind to go, right, we need to go on the offensive. And he does that classic Napoleon move where he tries to get in between the Allies and defeat the armies in turn. So, like we said in the last episode, the British had sent quite a lot of their troops away to America to fight the war over there, and they were also having problems in Ireland, so they couldn't bring all the troops down. They had to, because the Irish were supporters of Napoleon. So we've got these two armies already in Belgium because they had agreed to keep an armies there until the Congress of Vienna had been settled. And the Prince of Orange, he, on hearing of the Napoleon's return from Elba, he mobilizes his army, and he places the Belgian and Dutch fortresses in a state of defense. He sends Colonel Trippe to Paris to offer the French government assistance. The French government refuses this offer because at that time they believed that foreign intervention would fan the flames of nationalism against the king. And this is one of the reasons why earlier, remember, Castlereagh had withdrawn Wellington as ambassador to Paris for the same reason. The British government were a little bit concerned about keeping the prince in charge. He was only 22 years old. The British believed that he was inexperienced, and that he was a proud, and his staff believed that his pride got in the way. He wouldn't take counsel from his staff officers, one of whom was General Sir Henry Clinton. The Prince of Orange, he had been with Wellington in the peninsula, and he, I think, had picked up from Wellington his habit of not listening to his subordinates, and so he mimicked Wellington in his style of leadership, and didn't hold Sir Henry Clinton's opinion in high esteem. And the Prince of Orange made it perfectly clear that he would only ever yield to Wellington himself on decisions like that. And so when and this is what happens, basically. Wellington is returned, he's ordered back from this is Notre Dame, by the way. He was ordered back from Vienna to take control of the army. And this is when the British start piling in troops into Belgium. From 9,181 troops are sent between the 25th of April to the 25th of May. By the end of May, the British and German elements had increased to 36,000, which was compared to the 14,000 of the months before. the total Anglo-Hanoverian elements took around about 60,000, which didn't include the Dutch and Belgian and allied minor allied contingents. And the beginning of the hostilities in June, the British Army, which includes these Dutch elements, amounted to about 110,000 men, but only 90,000, well, not only, but 90,000 of them were actually his field army. And to achieve this, though, as I say, the British had to strip Britain and Ireland of their garrisons. And this left the Irish sections low. They had to wait for the veterans to return from Canada. But we're talking a lot of the Peninsular War people had been removed. Wellington was complaining at this time that he had a shortage of artillery, that he was not confident in his staff. He complained a lot of the time after the battle about the inefficiencies of his staff and the inadequacies of his subordinates. And he particularly he wrote to Bathurst on the 25th of June after the battle to say that his artillery, commander artillery, was particularly poor. And we'll see during the one of the things that Wellington was constantly berating was the fact that the artillery and the cavalry weren't thinking correctly. The artillery would be doing counter battery, but you're doing counter battery with a French army that is built around its artillery in a sense, with the Grand Battery. So Wellington always felt that was a waste of effort, and the cavalry, he always complained, were too hot-headed. They were basically a one-shot kind of thing, and he needed them to be a bit more in control. So his only real confidence he had was in his veterans of his veteran guard elements in his infantry. Hey, hello, Cessna Man 71. Good to see you. Oh, we got another one here. Who's this one? And Mini Loops 71. Everyone's called something 71. We're loving flying down the Champs-Élysées here. So you can... The photographic scenery doesn't load well. No, yeah, it might be my connection. It could be the server. There's been a bit of a problem with the latest update. I suppose it's better than nothing, though. The other issue that Wellington has at this time for his troops, I don't know why I'm talking about Wellington a lot. We should be talking about Napoleon, but the British elements were a pain, but the Dutch and Belgian ones were even more unreliable. Many of their troops, he didn't consider them better than militia. Many of the Dutch Belgian troops literally a few years ago had been in the French army up to 1810, and so they had were more trained on the French techniques, Napoleonic techniques, than the British techniques. Many of the Belgian troops believed that were not happy with the elements of the Dutch army being in Belgium. And some openly celebrated Napoleon's return. And this forces Sir John Colborne, who was on the Prince of Orange's staff, to warn the Prince of Orange that he would not trust the Belgian troops an inch. The British themselves were suspicious of the Dutch general staff. They believed they weren't reliable. This meant that many of the British insisting that the British army would garrison key fortresses. And Wellington, aware of this situation, then decides, quite rightly, to disperse the Dutch and Belgian troops through his army, so that they would be, he would have elements that he could trust next to these elements he can't trust, and he hoped that the elements of the British army that he could trust would rub off on the Dutch and Belgian elements. So they weren't allowed to, the Dutch and Belgian elements weren't allowed to form a core of their own. And that's despite the fact that the King of the Netherlands wanted his own corps and his own and the Prince of Orange to command it. In order for that to happen, Wellington had to allow the Prince of Orange to and his brother, the Prince Frederick, to take on senior command roles in the army. And so that's how Wellington gets around that. But then you can then see why Wellington then very much so brings lots of the command decisions under his own staff, and doesn't allow his command to be diluted. It's not to say as well, there's a lot of elements of the Dutch and Belgians perform very well when it gets to Waterloo, as we will see. But this is just the feeling at the time in March, and how they're hoping to organise. And around about this time, the British have asked the Portuguese government if they could transfer 14 to 15,000 troops from Lisbon, but the Portuguese refused this, arguing that it would expose their country to a risk of attack from Spain. Whether that was true, we don't know, but one of the things is it would probably have taken too long anyway for those troops to arrive in Paris. So what I'm going to do now is I will finish up this stream on Napoleon. And so all of those people watching on YouTube, thanks for watching. I hope you like and subscribe. For those watching on Twitch, what we're going to do is I'm going to take a little break, and then we're going to do a playlist that I started a few months back called Rivers, and I thought we'll go to the source of the Seine and then follow the river down to the sea, and we'll see what we can see on the way down that river. So for those of you watching on YouTube, that video will be under the Rivers playlist. Look for it under the River Seine, and you'll find the video will continue there. So I will say see you in a minute on Twitch and in the next video on YouTube.